You've seen the title, but I want to start off on a positive note. The Galaxy Z Fold 7 is definitely one of the best foldables I've ever used, but it still suffers from the same problems most people have and complaints people have with them. Are we ever going to get a foldable that doesn't compromise? Well, let's get into the whys, hows, and everything else in between. Do you like analysis like this? Well then how about hitting that subscribe button and join our team? We'd love to have you as part of a growing group of people, plus it helps me out more than you know. Cheers. So whether we agree or not, I do think folding phones of all shapes and sizes are 100% a niche product, and the sales figures back that up. I do think the pricing and the utility are out and out the biggest problems that you tell me that you're facing with these. I have the opportunity, the unrivaled opportunity actually, to test drive lots of different pieces of technology, and while I haven't used all options on the market, it's just immediately obvious to me that they aren't quite there, and I'm wondering if they ever will be. There's definitely more to it than just the exorbitant price tags that a lot of you complain about. As I noted, there's a lot of complaints in this, especially with that impressive Galaxy Z Fold 7 as a backdrop to this entire talking point. It got me thinking about this. It's an interesting time for the burgeoning lineup of flips and folds as it increases and expands year over year and more companies enter the fray. I think the slab phone market has really stagnated over the past few years. We're getting very incremental games year over year, and to be quite honest with you, they've hit maturity so quickly that it's definitely interesting to see where things are going to go. While conversely, foldables have definitely come a long way in a short period of time. About 7 or so years with these, they've got bigger displays, less noticeable creases, better cameras, and that's all great on paper. Let's get into the specifics though, because I think these upgrades at least mask some of the major negatives and why I think lots of you simply don't care all that much about the form factor that every brand seems to want us to adopt and wants us to eventually upgrade to. So the biggest outright concern for any piece of technology of this particular type is how well a Galaxy Fold or a OnePlus Open or whatever it happens to be is how it will withstand everyday usage. The thing is, with regular phones that we've been using for a better part of a decade now, the flat screens on those are just easier to maintain, harder to damage, just from normal usage, and I mean just using it as it's intended, and in many cases it makes them easier to protect as a result. With foldable phones, a mechanism can fail, especially with those foldable screens. The flexible glass is softer than regular glass, so it's definitely prone to nicks, scuffs and dings, and they can crack along that seam as well. You can close these two halves of the screen and trap things in between them and crack the panel. There are lots of pitfalls with this design option. Companies like Samsung are actually having to tell us how many folds their screens are rated for. In fact, look at every other brand, they rate them for so many thousand folds, which in isolation seems pretty odd for something that you're going to use every single day in your pocket. There is also the lack of protection against the elements on a lot of these devices, so things like dust and water protection aren't something many foldable phones are able to offer you because of the way they are manufactured. My biggest gripe with some foldables is the prominent display crease as well. I know a lot of you complain about this when we talk about them. It's not just a potential weak point, as once you see it, really hard to not notice it every time you open the foldable. It's an unavoidable key aspect of these types of devices. You're making a compromise, so you're going to have something there that you will probably have to deal with at least until we get a breakthrough in flexible screen technology, and it doesn't seem to be too many so far. I do think some OEMs are doing better than others, but it is a tough pill for people to swallow, and it is something we see you asking time and time again when we test out these types of phones. I think one of the biggest problems is that you are expected to pay over $1,200 for a device of this type. It almost stands to reason when you do so, you should really get the best of everything, and in particular the camera system, regardless of the form factor constraints. Whether it is a knock-on effect or courtesy of the lack of space inside due to the manufacturing methods that they use for these, we've yet to see a single foldable phone come with an elite or flagship level camera system across all of the lenses on offer. The best camera systems on the market definitely leave foldable cameras in the complete and utter dust. In the case of the Galaxy Z Fold 7, I do think the setup is comparable to many of the best mid-range phones in the Galaxy lineup. You are losing out though on fundamental components, or at least the fundamental components of a great phone, simply because the device has that larger internal panel and it has a knock-on effect on hardware such as this. Sure, you can use a rear camera as a de facto selfie system, which is in and of itself quite impressive, and it does mean that in some ways it will beat most of the best selfie cameras. The question is whether the uptick in pricing means you're happy to take such a noticeable downgrade everywhere, and in most cases, it's not really all that welcome. Brands like Honor are definitely trying to improve the situation, but you get a phone with a major bulge at the rear of it that renders the thinness that they seem to sell these on quite moot, I must admit. If we also try to boil down a foldable to its base ingredients, it's effectively two halves of regular phones or thin regular phones stuck together. The inner screen is the glue that holds all of this together, and it's something that, of course, is the key selling point. That is a really big oversimplification, but if that is true, you'd expect a phone of this type to come with massive internal batteries or multiple batteries tucked inside, right? Well, it doesn't exactly work like that. Physically, there just isn't quite as much room for big internal cells. Usually there's a split battery, and the capacity ordinarily is much smaller than that of a regular phone from brands like OnePlus and Samsung. Two thin slivers of phone don't quite equate to one thick brick, so you'll end up with small batteries sapping at a very, very power hungry and massive internal screen. There's no foldable on the market that therefore can match the lifespan of the best flagship phones. You're effectively taking a hit in lifespan, and a major one at that, and therefore productivity on top of that, for this 2-in-1 form factor. It's confusing given the intended professional use case application that people tout as a reason to go out and buy these types of devices. And although productivity is a key component of any device nowadays, I think the term multitasking has lost some of its weight in recent years. I do think the idea that an ordinary person needs to run two what are mobile apps side by side simultaneously really isn't all that common. Think about it for a second. Save YouTube, Netflix, or another video service, you can't always effectively or efficiently run two apps side by side on a screen, which most of them have square aspect ratios to run. Yes, I do think lots of people love this, and at times I love this, but there is a key reason why most tablets out there adhere to 16:9 or even elongated 16:10 and slightly other aspect ratios that are wider on the x-axis. The shape and size are just easier to play with and have more scope for true multitasking. One-to-one ratios, well, they're fine, but in most cases, they'll get the job done, but it isn't quite as nice to experience these. I get that this is definitely a major nitpick, but we haven't seen anyone except Huawei, and we know what happened to that particular brand, try and make a trifold to maximize the productivity of the screens that we have available on foldables. Take, for example, YouTube. So this is a clear example of this. In full screen, yes, you get a larger video, and a better video at that. The black borders, though, on the tops and bottom of the screen, no matter which way you hold it, are definitely ruin the immersion if you run this as a one-to-one. Side by side with another application, absolutely fantastic. So I do think it's about finding the optimum usage to get the most of that inner screen experience when you're using these types of devices. I think Chrome is another really good example of where foldables fall down. Yes, larger web pages look great. The problem, though, is that even when you're using a larger screen, you're still in most cases using a mobile browser without the extension support, which therefore means you have all the problems that come with mobile web pages. I am hoping that Google has a greater emphasis and at least puts a lot of work in on the dedicated desktop mode with Android 16 and above, and it might help enhance the foldable screen experience, as so far, it just definitely feels like you're running, well, you are running mobile apps side by side, and that isn't always the best for productivity. At least looking really far off into the future, if we get triple folding phones that start off truly try to ape a dedicated tablet display, then we might have something to properly sink our teeth into when it comes to real productivity in your pocket. As it stands, you're getting a bit of a halfway house that might only be useful to specific people out there. If you're one of those people, that is definitely fantastic, and I think you'll love foldable phones. If not, then it feels like you have to find a way to maximize the inner screen experience beyond what is a really small pool and small selection of applications that take advantage of it. The thing is, when all of these compromises are folded into the mix, it's easy to see why foldable phones just aren't worth it for practically any of the tech buying public, and I kind of count myself in this to a greater extent. Let's look at the math of Samsung's most recent releases. So the Galaxy Z Fold 7 starts at $1,999 off plan. Sure, you can get discounts on cell plans, but let's work with this for now, as I think it paints a better picture. This is almost the same price as a Galaxy S25 Ultra, which, although you can get discounts on this, is technically retailing at $1,299. If you pair that with the Galaxy Watch 8 at $379, and maybe even a Tab S10 FE, yet it isn't the best tablet out there, but it will get you by for $499, I think you get just as much utility for the same price, or thereabouts, at $2,179 versus almost $2,000. I'd say you don't get anywhere near as much utility with a foldable device. Do you benefit from the ability to have a 2-in-1 form factor in your pocket? Well, absolutely, and if that's for you, more power to you, go for it. That said, I think it's not all roses when you start to dial down into the details. Does this mean that foldables are a waste of time? Well, obviously not, but looking at the bigger picture, I think it's a strange micro market that makes less sense to most people, the more you start to analyze all of the angles, and especially once you start to factor in that price. I want to ask you though, what do you think? Do you think foldables are really worth it yet? Make no mistake, there are some cracking options out there, but I think you're definitely better off getting a full setup with a slab phone, earbuds, whatever it happens to be, for the same price, or at least the same asking price. Let me know down in the comment sections below. I'm fascinated to hear what you think. I think foldables are one of those talking points that a lot of people either hate or love, or maybe you're on the fence. Let me know down in the comment sections below, and I will speak to you later.